All right, everybody, welcome back to the To Be Fit podcast. I'm Brian Bott, and today's guest is Craig Siegel, owner of the Outpost Running and Walking Company. We're talking all things running, how to find the perfect shoe, how to avoid rookie mistakes, and using running to boost your mental and physical health. Plus, Craig shares his journey from semi-pro runner to business owner. So let's dive in. Craig, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. So you've been running since 11, I think you mentioned, and you've had a career from college and post that. So take me a little bit about from your running career, from getting started that to where you are now and owning the shop.
Yeah, definitely. I was fortunate enough. I grew up in Homedale, which for anybody that runs high school cross country or track and field knows that Homedale Park is a pretty I don't want to call it famous, but it's a pretty infamous place.
The bowl, right?
The bowl.
Thing's miserable.
I know. And I was lucky enough that I grew up literally, if you were standing at the starting line of Homedale Park and turned around and looked beyond that pond up in those hills, that's where I grew up as a kid. So literally Homedale Park was my backyard. So I had a great experience getting into the sport. It wasn't something where I was forced into it. I think that's, kind of important, key to my journey because I was actually able to enjoy it from a very young age and not really have too much pressure. But my father, when we moved to that house in Homedale, he was right about early 40s or so. And I think he kind of saw the way that some people were taking their health at his age and kind of committed to himself and to the family that he wasn't going to allow that to happen to him. So he started running. So it wasn't something where he was running at a younger age and was, running competitively or anything like that. And so really when he started, that's kind of when I started. I just kind of tagged along with him. So a lot of memories of him, dropping me up the start hill and dropping me up the bowl and things like that and having to loop back for me. But then ultimately, kind of as I made my way from like that middle school kind of runner into high school, that's when I kind of truly found the passion for the sport. So I was fortunate enough to have some amazing coaches in my life. One being Bill Loughran. So he was the coach at Homedale High School for probably about 15 years, 20 years, somewhere around there when all was said and done. But he actually grew up right here in Highlands. So he was a Henry Hudson graduate in the early 80s. And one of the most influential people in my life, kind of set my life on the path and trajectory that it's been on. Kind of developed that love for running. And I didn't walk into high school being a stud at all. I kind of joke with people that my freshman high school mile PR was 5:14, which is, for anybody out there, is not very good. No one ever would have said like that kid's gonna kind of do some stuff and run really fast any of these days. But really just kind of fell in love with the sport at a young age. And in the late 90s and the early 2000s, just followed the sport, looked up to guys, like Bob Kennedy, Todd Williams, all these like old school pro runners. And I had the good fortune to run at Villanova University. So Marcus O'Sullivan was the coach there. I was my coach there. He was a 4-time Olympian. For Ireland, ran under 4 minutes for the mile 101 times. So we're talking about one of the most legendary, middle distance runners ever. And again, I've just been really fortunate with my running career, for lack thereof. Moved on to, once I graduated, kind of moved up in distance to the marathon. So that was really where I kind of found myself post-collegiately. Again, no professional or no sub-professional, just kind of more of a sub-elite category, I would say. And then now, I hit 40 this year, as did you. Yep. And
welcome.
Things don't feel as good as they used to, so I just kind of get out to enjoy it now. So that's kind of where I'm at with my current running, my current state of running. So,
all right. So you finished up, your collegiate and post-collegiate career running. What kind of inspired you to continue with that passion into the business of doing something with running, right? So I know for a lot of people, sometimes they're like, I don't want to mix my passion with business because sometimes it can be a drain. You're like, if I truly love running and this is what I want to do, the last thing I want to do is have people asking me a ton of questions and feel like it kind of gets muddied down. But obviously, I see all the stuff that you post up about. It's obvious how passionate you are about running and what you're doing in terms of the Outpost. So what kind of led you to kind of go down that path in terms of continuing it with the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think most run specialty shop owners don't get into it for the dollars and cents. Not that, many of us love, P&Ls and, things like that. But I think for me specifically, it definitely it's kind of like this next evolution of my relationship with running, right? I think from a competitive standpoint, when I was training, we were doing everything that we could to get as fast as we physically could. And this to me is kind of a way to stay involved with the sport. And yeah, sometimes it is really hard to kind of parse out your hobby from your work. But I look at it as like, it's actually kind of like a great opportunity for me to work with what I love doing every single day. So, to me, it really just kind of came down to the ability to still stay connected with the sport, still stay involved, even though I'm not kind of racing at any type of level. So yeah, that was definitely the motivation to opening up the shop.
Okay. So you've been in this industry for a long time. Obviously you started running at 11, but even from a business standpoint, you've been doing this for a while. So, what's the story behind the Outpost? What sets, what you're doing there in terms of a running specialty shop apart from, just hopping in the Dick's and just grabbing whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, great question. We get it all the time. We're very specialized, right? So we're a very niche kind of community. And for us, it really comes down to that one-on-one experience, right? So similar to like a fitness studio where you kind of get that one-on-one personal experience. For us, it's really a matter of like knowing what we're talking about, talking to customers and actually having a relationship with the customer. And for us, it's all about community building. So it's, yes, we're fitting shoes and that's really how we keep the lights on, but it's also much more than that in terms of creating a space for people where they can feel comfortable coming in, even if they're not running. A large portion of people that walk in our doors, it's, I'm not running, but I need good shoes for X, Y, and Z, and they just need help. So we get people like that all the way to people that are, 25-time marathoners and everything in between. So for us, it's really about creating like a comfortable space and where people can receive the help that they deserve, which we don't really find that in retail too often now in 2024. So.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, right? Because it could be super intimidating. Like you have questions to ask, or you have things that you're worried about, and you're like, if I go in this running shop and I ask this question, this dude that runs 1,700 marathons is gonna think I'm an idiot, or like he's gonna embarrass me or whatever. So so talk to me about some of the community stuff, right? You mentioned that in the last. I see the posts that you put up. I know you're involved with a lot of the high school athletes, maybe even younger. I see you do the pancake stuff. Runs, lots of different stuff going on. So, break that down for me. What are some of the things that you guys are involved with in the community?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely invest a lot of time and effort into the high school component. I think that for us and for me specifically, like that's where we fell in love with the sport, right? So I have memories all the way back to when I was going to specialty running shops when I was a kid, down to Miles Ahead, and still nothing but love and respect for those guys down there. They're kind of the OGs in the area. And, to me, that left a lasting impression on me and my journey. And I'm hopeful that, we can do the same for some of these kids that walk through our doors, right? Running and track and field and cross country, it's a sport that really honestly doesn't get kind of the spotlight too much. And if we can kind of help with kind of elevating the sport a little bit or giving these kids a little bit more attention, then I feel like I'm really kind of doing my part in helping out. But yeah, I mean, from a community perspective, we help out with meets, we put on meets, for track and field, and just kind of help elevate the sport from that high school perspective.
What are those struggles when you say like, hey, the kids don't get enough attention, things like that? Is that just because other sports are kind of dominate, like the football, things like that, or more in the spotlight, or?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like the casual football fan is still somewhat interested probably in like their local high school's football team, but they're probably not too much interested in in their local cross country team and how they're doing. So, I mean, I think it's a sport that, again, we have some of the, especially track and field. I mean, cross country distance runners, like, and I could speak as a distance runner, like we know one thing and it's just running straight, right? But some of these track athletes are some of the best athletes in the world. I mean, even if you look at any kind of, D1 football, kind of roster, a large portion of those athletes that are on that roster are track and field All-Americans. So it's one of those sports that, again, kind of doesn't get its spotlight. To it's also, it can be hard to understand too, just in general, right? Even not talking about high school or college, but if you're watching someone run, a 350 mile on the track on TV, to us, like, yeah, we know what those times mean and we know how hard that effort is, but to someone watching it on TV, it may not look as fast and as hard as it really is. So I think that's part of it, I don't know how you correct that, but that's not up for me to figure out. So,
I mean, some companies are doing great. Like, I mean, I'm not dropping any companies because obviously you represent them both, but like I know Nike did a good job. Like when whoever it was, and you'll know the names, and I won't, was trying to, I guess, set the record for the marathon. Like they almost made it like Nike was trying to break the record for the marathon.
Yeah,
and they
breaking two.
Yeah, and they did those videos where it was like they ran the treadmill at like the speed that guy was going, and they'd have the people show up and like try to like run it for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And then like they
People
make it like, they like make it like 30 seconds and
Right.
like to try and appreciate.
Right.
Because I mean, people hear about everything that went into breaking like a 5-minute mile, 4-minute mile. And now like I didn't even know that was like, when you just said that time, I was like, I didn't even know that like, what is the world record mile right now?
I think it's still 3:43 if I'm not mistaken. But that was from a while back. So that's still yet to be, I mean, things have gotten crazy fast over the years. Just the depth in the sport itself has gotten insane from that middle distance to long distance.
Is that better? I mean, my background obviously is in strength and conditioning. I like working with kids that are involved in track and field because it's much easier to see a correlation to what happens. Right. Yeah. Maybe you get stronger and faster, but you stink at football. Right. Like, I don't know. You might not win any more games. Sure. Right. But it's like, hey, if we do this thing for 16 weeks and you throw the javelin further or you run your time faster, we can say like, hey, this made a difference. So I think that's great for kids at that age because it gives them a little bit more of like, they can see when you do X, Y can happen, right? I like seeing that correlation for the kids, and it makes it fun for training. And also, like, to be honest, when they're looking at colleges and things like that, it makes it a little bit easier. Like if you can do this time or you can throw this thing this far, you got a shot.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a sport where I don't want to say it's not skill-based because clearly there's skill involved, but yeah, there is a finite kind of, hey, you ran this time in the mile. Like I know that you can run this time as opposed to being like more soccer or football or other skill-based sports. Yeah, we don't really need a left tackle right now, right? Like, or just like trying to assess, an individual player's like skill on the turf and things like that, right? That's people can make their own judgments on that where, no, you ran this time, like you're that good, so it's pretty clear cut. So.
Yeah, and I think the running in general, when I look at any sport, it seems to do the best job with community, right? You show up to any 5K on a weekend, and there's like hundreds of people there amped up and ready to go. It doesn't matter whether it's like the local turkey trot or the New York City Marathon. Like people are jived up and genuinely happy to see everybody there. Sure, it seems like I'm a terrible runner. I signed up for my first half marathon. Okay, nice. To do the Asbury one. Okay, but like nice. It's definitely an approachable sport in terms of like, you feel like, and no one really cares. It's like, you just go and do your thing and show up, Yeah,
it's a very welcoming community. I think one of the very unique things about it is like, you can pick it up whenever, right? Like, we see a lot of former athletes that, you can't find 8 other players to go field a baseball team at the age of 40, nor would you probably really want to, but you can put on a pair of running shoes and go out your door and go out and run a couple miles and pick up the sport. And it doesn't matter if you're the fastest or the slowest at the end of the day. So yeah, it's a beautiful sport that people can find kind of any point in their journey.
All right. So let's transition into like people getting started with running or trying to, improve it. Like, what's one mistake when people are picking out shoes that they're going to run in that they make? What's like the kind of the most common error?
I can't emphasize this enough. Obviously, clearly I'm biased, but like support your local running shop. Like go in. These are people that know what they're doing. There is value there. You're not going to find it cheaper elsewhere. That the brands tell us what we sell it for, right? So there's a little bit of a misperception there, but I think one of the big things and that we try to talk to people about is like what's right for you might not be right for the next person, might not be right for the next person. So it's a very individualized kind of selection process. Stay off the internet, stay off the reviews. I mean, that's a big thing, right? People will come in and there's a shoe that's massively popular and someone has a bad experience with it and they write a bad review online and all of a sudden people read that and it's like, oh, that shoe's terrible now. And it's like, well, there's 20,000 people that didn't write anything about it that had a good experience. So, what we try to do is just really kind of focus on the individual, and not kind of have those outside influences. I think that's super helpful. For us in our process, we kind of keep it very simple. When we get someone in, new or repeat, or, someone that's been in the same shoe for the last 15 years, we'll still kind of go through the process with them in terms of watching them walk, measure them, kind of actually fitting them as it should be done. So, addressing any kind of like injury issues or like their volume, like how much they're running, how much they're planning on running, things like that. And we kind of incorporate that all into the actual fit process. So.
Yeah. So to summarize, like, stay off the internet. Don't listen to your friends.
Right.
Go see someone that actually knows what they're doing with this stuff.
Yeah, and even if we get in, people in all the time like, oh, my brother's a big runner. He runs in X. I need X, and it's like, okay, well, that's cool, and maybe that is where you ultimately end up. But like, let's kind of approach it with an open mind, because what he might like, you might not like, and you might have different types of feet, and you might have a different injury history. You might have different goals, things like that. So we really try to approach it as individualized as possible.
Right. Because when you look at a lot of the marketing, like everything's like, oh, this is the perfect running shoe. Sure. Right. And I'm assuming that that's not true.
There is no perfect running shoe. Yeah. There's a perfect running shoe for you, which might be different than me. So yeah, there is no perfect running shoe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, take me through that process. So if someone comes in and they're like, hey, listen, I'm looking to, let's say, let's use myself for an example. Mm-hmm. I'm coming in, I'm most of my background is in strength training, not in distance running. And I'm going to do my first half marathon. Mm-hmm. What's that process look like when I walk in the door and I'm like, hey, I need some help?
We try to simplify it, right? Because there's a lot of different bells and whistles that can throw people off course, right? So what we'll do, ask the individual to take their shoes off, watch them walk. We kind of focus on what's going on with their ankles and arches from a biomechanical standpoint. If someone has a higher arch, we'll kind of sway towards certain shoes. If someone has a flatter foot, we kind of sway towards other shoes, things like that. We'll actually use what we call a Brannick device. So from way back in the day, that little thing that you used to put your foot in to get measured.
Like when you were a kid?
Yeah. So they still make them. We still have them. They're still accurate as anything else. And then we'll kind of pull out a bunch of different suggestions, kind of based off of the feedback that we're getting from the individual that's walking in. Again, if you're doing more track and sprint work versus a half marathon training, like that's going to kind of sway what kind of shoes we're going to pull for you. Talk about a little bit about injury history again, and then, kind of make different suggestions, try a bunch of things on. We actually let you go outside, do a little jog kind of up and down the brick walkway in front of our shop, kind of get a good feel for them that way. Because sometimes people get thrown on a treadmill. It can kind of be a little bit deceptive, right? That's not how the shoes, people aren't always going to run on a treadmill. It's not always how the shoes are going to feel. So, and our role is really to kind of help guide you through the process. It's not to sell you on one brand or sell you a specific shoe or anything like that. Kind of, we're very much reactionary. So if you're saying, hey, this is too tight, or I like a little bit more cushion, or this is too firm, then we kind of know what direction to go with in terms of the options to kind of pull and present for you.
Because I'm sure that's tricky sometimes too. Because like if people come in and they do say like, "Hey, my brother runs in this. I want that," and you're like, "Well, let's do this." They immediately they're like, "This guy's trying to sell me something."
Right.
It's like the shoes I might say might be cheaper. I don't know. Like it might be less expensive, but finding that fit and making sure that is correct. I'm assuming is hugely important for most people.
Yeah, definitely. That's the goal at the end of the day, is to get people into something that's comfortable and that's functional and that's going to work for them. So be it if they walk out with the thought that they had in their head and what they wanted when they walked in, that's totally fine. We just want to make sure that that's the right thing for them.
So are there any like customer success stories that you can kind of think of that come to mind of people that came in and maybe had an opinion one way or the other and then had made kind of a transformation from that?
No one in particular off the top of my head. I'm always a big fan of when like our customers or individuals or runners, when they come in, right, and like we might have fit them for just like a training shoe, right? So something that they're going to go out and do their daily mileage in, but they've started to gravitate to their sport and they've started to really love the sport and get into it as much that they're coming in for like a race day shoe, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that's always like it's like the fun kind of fitting, it's kind of the faster shoes, it's the sleeker stuff, it's things that have all these crazy different technologies that in our industry didn't even exist 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So to me, that's always like a fun kind of fit. Because you're seeing that person kind of elevate their game because they're kind of and elevate their kind of shoe fitting, not experience, but kind of the shoes that they're looking at because their interest in the sport has kind of skyrocketed. So that's always a fun time.
Yeah. So I mean, you do a good job when they come in with maybe a more basic interest, and then that builds and they go on from there. Yep. What are some of those technologies that weren't around? Like I wouldn't even imagine like what makes a shoe fast versus another.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're in 2024. I would say 2017, 2018. That's when Nike kind of released the original Vaporfly, which is kind of like the I don't want to say king of the road racing scene, but that's kind of what I call it behind the scenes. But that was kind of the first shoe that kind of kicked off this revolution with carbon fiber plates embedded into the midsoles. Because in theory, it kind of helps with pop and responsiveness. And another thing too, that huge technology that's evolved is just the different forms of cushioning. And it's been debated, like what's making the bigger, like why are people getting so fast, or why is the depth getting so fast, and is it the shoes? And the shoes are a part of it, but training has also evolved tremendously over that time too. And to speak specifically to the shoes, a lot of people debate, is it the carbon fiber plate that's kind of propelling these athletes to those times? And yeah, it's some of that, but it's also been argued that the cushioning and the updates to the cushioning actually allows the individual to recover faster. So they can work out harder, more frequent, they can get fitter, and ultimately not kind of tire out as quickly during the race, more half marathon type stuff itself. So
yeah, that makes that's an interesting point, because you'd always think about just the tool giving you an advantage on race day, but I never thought of it that way. And that like if the tool is actually allowing you to train harder or a little bit better, then you can push the physiology a little bit further as well.
Yeah, and we've seen it in track spikes as well. Like some of that technology has been implemented in track spikes, and that's been a huge thing. And even talking to some of my buddies that are actually professional runners themselves, like just getting their feedback on it, and they're like, yeah, it's more of like the recovery perspective. They can go out and say at a championship race, like if you're running a 1500 at a USA championship, like you have to run 3 times. You have your 3 different rounds that you have to get through, and for the ability to recover quicker between those rounds is super critical. So it's an exciting time definitely in our world for sure.
So have you ever read Epstein's book, The Sports Gene?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so like he does a good job in there. He breaks down, like he has like a lot of different sports. So he like swimming is one of the examples, and he has this chart, and it's like no change in world records and then a drop, and then no change in world records and then a drop, and then he like cross-referenced it with like they took the lips off the side of the pool, new world records, like better skin caps, world records, like better whatever, and so. I'm assuming any other sport like that is going to follow similar trends. Because I think the funniest story from that book is that he talked about they still do it where there's some cycling event where for the same reason, better bikes, whatever, better headgear that's more dynamic in wind. But every so often someone will still try to break the world record, but they have to ride the exact bike that the guy did it from like 19, whatever the time is. And like no one's been able to break it. Like for someone who has no idea about running, like what's the difference between like, hey, I'm going out in my PF Flyers and trying to run, a 400 versus, something that's just tricked out and ready to go. What would the difference be like that someone could see? Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you brought up swimming and biking, because I feel like, swimming, biking, and running are kind of all these parallel endurance sports. And one of the things like, right, with cycling, like, right, it's always like, it's the bike, right? In terms of you can make it lighter, you can get different mechanics, you can, that's always been kind of accepted in that sport. And then it kind of bled over to swimming. It's like, the wetsuits, right? There's legal wetsuits, non-legal wetsuits, things like that. Running up until the last like 10 years, like really never had to deal with that. So I feel like that's not to kind of evade not to dismiss your question, but like that's been one of the really interesting things in running is that like, now it's starting to become accepted. And I think that was like what was really disruptive like a decade ago was like, okay, wow, these crazy technologies are now getting implemented into shoes, when running was always thought of like, nope, that's just like you put on your pair of split leg shorts and go out the door and just whatever shoes you had. But yeah, I mean, from a difference perspective, I would hope you would notice a difference between like PF Flyers and, some of the stuff that's out there now. I mean, biggest thing is, cushioning, the level of cushioning, just kind of the responsiveness, and the support too. And then we start kind of talking about all these carbon plates that are kind of being embedded into shoes. And, I would say probably up until about 3 years ago or so, carbon fiber was generally talked about and reserved for race day. Now there's been a lot of shoes that are using carbon fiber or nylon embedded plates into the midsoles, like for daily training too. So, which again, it's all about being able to run faster, recover quicker, to ultimately kind of gain more fitness.
So transitioning into training, let's assume everything else is fitted right and they're ready to go. Let's say I'm sitting on the couch and I'm motivated. Hey, I want to do my first 5K. I want to get into running. What's like one piece of advice for someone who wants to start running, but is kind of intimidated by it?
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give?
Yeah. I mean, definitely don't bite off more than you can chew. I think we could probably say that for a lot of things when it comes to jumping into a fitness venture. I think for us, when we get someone in that's new that either is just starting out on the running journey or hasn't run in a long time, is getting back into it, don't be afraid to kind of do like a walk run, right? Like go out and run for a minute and then walk for a minute. And then as you kind of get comfortable with that, kind of decrease the amount of walking and increase the amount of running, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to feel good about what we're doing. And if we're going to go out there and be like, all right, I'm going to go set out to run, a 5K or 5 miles or whatever. And then I get 2 miles in and I feel like hell and I'm stopping and I'm walking and I'm grabbing my knees. Like you're not going to want to do that anymore. And you're also like not going to feel good about what you're doing. So if we can kind of set the person up right from the get-go in terms of, setting up an expectation level where they're going to feel good about what they're doing when they're done, that's kind of the ultimate goal. Yeah.
The phrase that I like to use with clients is like, listen, sometimes you need to get in shape to run, not run to get in shape. Right? Like everyone just assumes, well, I know a workout's supposed to last an hour, so I went out and tried to run for an hour.
Right.
And it's like, well, if you were trying to pick up, tennis, right? You wouldn't go right to the A class level league and be like, well, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm gonna play for an hour, right? You have to practice like anything else. And I think most people don't give running the respect that they should in terms of treating it as a sport or as a task to get ready for, and they want to use it to get in shape, which you certainly can to a certain point, but understanding that, you're not going to go right out to no mileage to like, I just picked it up and went for kind of like a 5 mile run.
Right. Yeah. It's not going to end well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
and even from people that are in shape, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like you could have the cardiovascular system. Like if you're a cyclist, like you have the cardiovascular system to do it, but that doesn't mean your joints and tendons and ligaments and those things that would be involved with running are going to be ready to jump into that. Right.
Yeah.
So from me, like when I work with people who have maybe that goal as like a strength and conditioning coach, I tell them like, look, let's say they were out of shape. Like we can use that as the end goal, right? We want to run this 5 or 10K, but we can train your cardio system in hundreds of different ways, right? Like we can do some lower level, like zone 2 type stuff on a bike. And then like you're saying, do walk runs as training days. Not everything that you have to do has to be through that to work up to it. I know it might be more my realm, but when you were doing stuff, or if you consult with anybody who's doing running, what about like the strength training component of it for people?
Yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't exactly describe myself as a gym rat when I was training a lot, but for us, like it was a lot of just stuff to keep us healthy, right? It wasn't even so much like lifting; it was more drills. So we did a lot of hurdle work, things like that, hip mobility, plyometrics, stuff like that, more body weight than anything. But yeah, I mean, not speaking from like a gym or weight room perspective, but the whole philosophy on training has drastically changed over the years in terms of. There's now, I'm sure you can probably speak to it better than I can, but like double threshold workouts, things like that, where people are doing 2 workouts in a day. And when we say workouts, we mean like interval workouts. So, that was kind of never heard of, 5 years ago, which is kind of crazy. But again, like you were saying with that book, where all these little changes and just kind of keeps going, like world record keeps dropping. And a lot of that is training, it's footwear, and the combination of things. So.
Yeah, the way that I describe it to clients is like, listen, if your goal is to pick up running as what you want to do as your activity, we just need to make sure that you're strong enough to handle the beating that entails.
Sure.
Right? Because, if we're looking at 10, 12, 15 times body weight in terms of joint forces, depending on what we're doing, like you have to be able to sustain that, right? I don't really care how much you back squat, deadlift, or anything like that, but making sure, like you're saying, that you have adequate hip ankle mobility, that your knees can handle the deceleration if you're going out and running on trails like that Navasink challenge that was a few weeks ago, like going, like you could see people, right? They were actually better uphill than they were downhill. They couldn't handle the force of of their weight going forward at that speed, kind of going downhill. So I think that's what I try to get across to people. I don't care whether they're running, playing tennis, pickleball, whatever it is. Like, hey, listen, if I don't need the gym to be your end goal, we need to use this to make sure that your body is strong enough, mobile enough, healthy enough to handle the amount of running or the amount of golf or whatever it is that you want to do. So that's the way that we look at it. I think a lot of people do way too much, way too soon. And they don't give themselves enough time to kind of work up to the distances that they want to be doing. Yeah,
no, I agree. Definitely.
What's one big myth about running gear or running in general that kind of drives you crazy that you have to deal with that kind of like on maybe a day-to-day basis as a shop owner?
Man, it's a loaded question. A myth about running gear. I don't really know. I mean, I think sometimes, people, not people that come into the shop, but I think sometimes people can underestimate the importance of it, right? Like, oh, what's the difference between this? And like we were just talking about before. I don't know. I don't really know if I have a myth, to be honest with you.
We'll think about it as time goes on. We'll circle back to it. But all right. So I know for me, like my preference is strength training. It's what I like to do. It's about where my background is. But I know when I'm super stressed or if I'm having a crappy day, like there's something about like getting out and going for a run, even though I'm horrible at it, that is more of a mental health relief for me. So, can you just talk to like, how can running help transform kind of your mental health? How has it helped you or maybe other friends of yours, even if you're not like a competitive athlete?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, obviously physically there's benefits, but a lot of it's above the shoulders, right? So for me, I've always looked at it, it's like my time to kind of get away. It's my time to check out. No one can get a hold of me, right? And obviously, as a business owner, it's kind of 24/7 where, I might have this 45-minute window in the morning where I can go out and go for a run and that's it. Like I'm out there, I'm enjoying it. And I'm not kind of bothered by the tasks of daily living. I think for me personally, it's really just having the repetition too, is super important. I think that's super important for a lot of people. Even I know today, like I didn't run this morning. I'm kind of off, a little bit. I think, physically it kind of just helps get your body like jump started, but mentally too. I mean, that having consistency in a routine, be it whatever it is that you're doing, if it's going to the gym every single day or if it's getting out the door every single day to go out for a run, I know for me just helps, tremendously with my mental health. And it's definitely, it's been something that I've leaned on heavily in that capacity. Yeah.
Do you feel like you still like, even though like when you were competing at it, that you got that from it? Cause I know for me, like the reason that I get that mental relief from it is because I don't have to think, right? I put my shoes on, albeit probably the wrong ones, and I can just go out and run and I don't have to worry about it. Whereas if I'm strength training, I almost like know too much for my own good. Sure. And sometimes I'm like, maybe I should be doing this or I should be doing that. Whereas with running, it's like, I'm just going to run until I kind of get tired and turn around and come home. Yeah. So has that changed for you since like you're not competing at it anymore and just use it for fun or?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's been, and I think I would think any like former athlete or quote unquote former athlete, like goes through a transition period when obviously, you've been doing one sport for decades at a competitive or a high level or attempting to be at a high level. And then you have to come to the realization that your body doesn't allow you to do that anymore. And so to me, pivoting from, I need to make sure that I'm on the track, on Tuesdays to do interval work. And I need to make sure I'm out on the roads doing a tempo workout on Fridays, and really holding myself to, your Sunday long run, like can never skip your Sunday long run. Like you always got to get that Sunday long run in, to now just getting out and trying to enjoy it, and it's now become a longer term game in terms of like, no, this is something that I really enjoy and I want to do it for the next 40 years of my life. So how do I accomplish that from a long-term goal perspective, as opposed to just kind of, I don't want to say, burning the candle, but just kind of like, trying to do everything too quickly, and then I'm not able to run for the next couple of decades. Right. So yeah, the goals shift, I think, as you kind of get older, and you phase out of the like hyper competitive part of the sport to more of just the recreational or enjoyment perspective of the sport. And I think, again, that's a really unique thing about running, is that other sports don't get that, right? Like, yeah, you can play football for 8 years maybe, or whatever it is, if it's high school and college, and then, yeah, chances are you're probably done. You're probably not playing football anymore. But you can have this shift in the way that you approach the sport, so that it's more of a long-term activity that you can do, for your physical health, your mental health, and just ultimately get out there and enjoy.
Yeah, I think especially for running, I think there comes a point where what type of game are you playing, right? In the beginning, like earlier in your career, it was more of like a finite game, right? Meaning like there's a race on this date and I'm either going to win or lose or place wherever. Now it's an infinite game, right? Where the only goal is to be able to keep playing, right? Like that's the only goal. And sometimes that makes it a lot more fun than feeling like, well, if I don't do a tempo run, what's the point of running today? Right. And that's useless because like what you would need to be doing to perform at a certain level. Right. And then it becomes kind of self-destruction. Well, if I can't get that in, why am I going to do that? But sometimes making that shift to be like, hey, the goal is to be able to do this forever, or for as long as humanly possible anyway, for myself. And that can really shift the mindset of like, yeah, I'm just going to go out because it's a nice day and do whatever I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that transition in the beginning is really hard. It took me quite a while to get to that point, or a place of acceptance of that. Cause again, like you've been doing it for so long, you just kind of think you can keep going, but wheels are going to come off at some point.
Yeah, so I think it's no different for strength athletes, right? Like I go into a workout, I'm like, man, like no one wants to be the guy who like is like, yeah, I used to bench. Like, but like you get to that point where like you start to think about like, man, like how long would I have to train to even get back remotely to the weights I used to be able to handle or whatever? Yep. And it's like, that's a hard transition because that's your identity. Right. I'm Craig, the runner who does this time or whatever. Sure. Yep. And then when that's gone, you're like, shit. Right. You figure something else out. Right. And it's hard to transition that. So when you're going out for a run to kind of clear your mind, like, do you have any like kind of mental practices or something that kind of helps you get into a state where you feel like you can clear your mind? Because I feel like sometimes the advice is like, oh, just relax. And you're like, well, if I could just relax, like I would just do that. Right. Like, so do you have something that helps you kind of like maybe like a mantra that you go through or some sort of method to kind of get you in the right mindset? Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily have like a mantra. I know there's a, large, I guess maybe a debate between, former competitive runners. Like, do you listen to music or do you not listen to music? Like, I think that's a big thing. Like, and I'm all for it. Like I'm listening to music and podcasts and all sorts of stuff. I feel like that helps me get out the door. But no, I mean, nothing really that from like a repetitive standpoint that'll kind of, like a mantra or anything like that. But I do like to throw on some good tunes and just kind of check out and enjoy it. So yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I think anybody in these subcultures, whether it's running, powerlifting, whatever, their own things have kind of weird habits. So like, what's the weirdest running habit that either you've picked up or a friend of yours or someone that you've trained with has had over the years? Oh man. I feel like for myself, like when I'm running with this sounds like very inconsequential, but like I always like, if I'm running with someone else, I should say, I always like to be on the left side. Like, I don't know why. No matter what side of the road? Well, I guess. Oh, no, I mean like of the person. Yeah, okay. Right. So like the person's always to my right. I always like being to the left. I don't know why, but it just feels like natural. But yeah, I don't know. Weird. Fair enough. Yeah. Not that I could ever pass you, but if I could, I would try to go on your other side. Right. Like just if I saw you out running. Right. Like, just how important are the local running communities and how does you and your business, how does the Outpost help foster that connection among the runners? Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, especially in the last couple of years, because like run clubs, I'm sure, as you know, have like exploded. Right. And, I mean, we're in a good area where there are a bunch of active like running clubs, so be it more of like, your OGs, like a Shore AC or Jersey Shore Running Club, or some of like the newer, clubs that have kind of come up over the last couple of years, like a Red Bank Run Club or, locals down in Belmar and Run 732 out of Asbury. So, I mean, I think how
how we support it. I mean, we'll have our own kind of group runs and things like that people can join. But it's more of like open invites to these other clubs to come and join too. So I think anything that we can do to get people together to get out the door is extremely helpful. And I know just for myself, if I'm meeting someone, I'm way more inclined to get out the door than if I'm not. But yeah, it's trying to just kind of elevate like a meetup, so if we can kind of get different brands involved, not only us, but we'll kind of loop in, some of our footwear vendors. So a lot of times, even like we were talking about before, those pancake runs, like we'll have a vendor there. So just last week, Brooks was on site with us, brought a bunch of demo shoes for people to test run. There's like zero obligation. Literally, that's what those pairs of shoes are designed to do, is that the reps bring them, people run in them, give them back after. And I think, again, just kind of having like a central hub for a lot of these different clubs and different groups to kind of convene is really important for the local running community.
Perfect. Yeah. So now that you had the Outpost open for a while, what's next in terms of with the Outpost and the walking company?
Yeah. I mean, I think just kind of keep on doing what we're doing, right? I mean, it's an underserved market, in my opinion, from a specialty running shop perspective. I think it's a community that is extremely active, and that's kind of been longing for something almost now for it's been almost a decade since kind of one of the, not a decade. There was a shop that was around maybe about 2 years. It's been since that has not been around, and then prior to that, it was a decade. So it's a community that I think really values like local businesses too. And if we can help fill that void for the community, I think that's the goal.
All right. So should everyone be running in minimalist shoes?
No. And that's, I mean, I think we've seen in the last, 5 years has proven that the pendulum has like kind of swung to the opposite side, right? More of that maximalist type design. But I think honestly, the truth falls somewhere in between, right? And not any one design of shoe is going to be best for the entire population. But I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020, but I think kind of what we saw is that the minimalist movement, it had its place, and it was well intentioned in terms of a simplistic design. However, we're not all super efficient. We don't run on dirt roads. We're not all 115 pounds and floating when we run, basically. So
they left out the part that if the cavemen had highways, they'd be driving on them,
right,
not running on them.
Yeah. So I think it does have its place. It still very much has its loyalists, which is totally fine. There's people that it definitely works for. I do think one of the good things that had kind of come out of that movement is it has inspired the brands to kind of